Welcome to the Explainer, everyone. Today we are unpacking a truly massive leap forward in artificial intelligence. We're looking at a groundbreaking new model called S1-Omni. Now, we all know AI can write a solid essay or help fold proteins, but S1-Omni is an entirely different beast. It essentially acts as a universal translator for scientific discovery, and it's capable of speaking the native languages of chemistry, biology, physics, and more, literally all at the exact same time.
I want you to just pause and hold this question in your mind for a second. What if one AI could understand chemistry, biology, and physics all at once? Think about the massive, game-changing potential of a truly unified scientific mind. We aren't just talking about a chatbot that has memorized a bunch of textbooks here. We are talking about an AI that can look at a chemical structure, analyze a medical brain scan, and fold a complex protein all within a single continuous thought process. It's wild.
All right, let's get into it. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the fragmented AI problem, then introduce the S1-Omni solution. After that, we'll look at its 3 pillars of reasoning, how to go about training a scientific mind, and finally, proving the Omni capability. Jumping right into Section 1, the fragmented AI problem. To really appreciate how elegant S1-Omni is, we have to understand the massive roadblock facing modern scientific research today. So right now, scientists are basically stuck making a really frustrating choice. On one hand, you've got incredible domain-specific models. Think of AlphaFold 3. These tools are highly accurate, but they are hyper-specialized. They only speak one language, like protein structures, and that's it. On the other hand, we have general large language models, or LLMs, which have a wonderfully broad understanding of text, but severely lack deep, rigorous scientific constraints. They can chat with you all day about biology, sure, but they can't accurately output complex, verifiable scientific data formats. The source material perfectly sums up this bottleneck, noting that existing scientific intelligence remains fragmented, limiting the joint modeling of heterogeneous data, scientific laws, and expert knowledge. Think of this fragmentation like having the world's most brilliant scientists all working in completely separate, locked rooms. They are making incredible discoveries for sure, but they absolutely cannot communicate their findings to each other.
But what if we could take all those brilliant, isolated scientists, unlock those doors, and bring them into a single, unified laboratory? That brings us to Section 2. Enter the S1-Omni solution.
S1-Omni is defined as a unified, multimodal reasoning model designed for scientific understanding, prediction, and generation across diverse disciplines. Now, the absolute key here is that S1-Omni doesn't just read text and guess an answer based on word patterns. It actually translates and reasons across multiple native scientific formats simultaneously, all while keeping the strict mathematical and geometric rules of each specific discipline completely intact. Let's trace exactly how S1-Omni pulls this off, because the architecture is fascinating. Guide your eyes down to the very bottom, where we see the multimodal inputs. Just look at the sheer variety going into this thing. The model takes in your standard text prompts, sure, but right alongside that, it's ingesting 3D material structures using CIF files, chemical sequences via SMILE strings, fully 3D folded proteins, incredibly complex numerical spectra data, and even raw medical images. All of these completely diverse inputs flow directly up into that central blue block, the S1-Omni reasoning engine. This is the shared brain. Here, it creates a unified hidden state, represented by those little colored squares in the middle, where it actively reasons through the problem across all those different modalities. But here is the true genius of the system. Instead of just spitting out a text-based answer, the model actually routes its thoughts into specialized top-level decoders. Look at that top row. Depending on what you asked it to do, it can trigger a scalar decoder for predicting regression properties. Or it could use an index decoder to highlight specific binding sites on a protein. It can even trigger a coordinate decoder using a diffusion transformer to physically generate a brand new 3D molecule, or an image decoder to directly edit a medical scan. It takes everything in through one central brain, but outputs the results using the exact native tools of that specific scientific field.
So, how does this incredibly complex engine actually work on the inside? Let's take a look at Section 3, 3 pillars of reasoning.
The whole architecture is basically built on these 3 steps. First, we have unified representation, where it gathers and maps the diverse data. Second is knowledge alignment, where it applies actual scientific laws to that data. And finally, domain-specific decoding, which we just saw, where it outputs the precise answer in the correct scientific format.
Looking a bit closer at step 1, it is vital to understand this isn't just about reading words on a page. The model is seamlessly mapping a chemical structure, a material's crystalline lattice, and a medical CT scan into a shared thought process. It preserves the unique structure of each object, rather than just mushing it all into raw, flat text.
And this brilliantly illustrates the second pillar, natural world knowledge alignment. Notice the highly structured 6-step pipeline here. This is how the researchers stop the AI from just making statistical guesses. Starting on the top left with Box 1, Scientific Data Curation, the team takes native scientific records, molecules, images, spectra, and builds the foundation. Moving over to Box 2, they standardize these into typed records, making absolutely sure the semantic boundaries of the data are clear. Now follow the arrow down to Box 3, Reasoning Dimensions. This is where the magic happens, where scientific laws act as strict constraints. The model applies expert evidence, linking support or explicitly excluding impossible chemical bonds based on the actual laws of physics. Then, in Box 4, Evidence-Grounded Scientific Reasoning, the model is forced to build a logical step-by-step chain from the evidence straight to the conclusion. It has to show its work. Moving to the right, Box 5 shows the validation phase. This is where expert experience checks the units, checks the ranges, and ensures the target hasn't accidentally leaked into the prompt. Finally, Box 6 yields the high-quality, traceable data record. By training the AI on this exact pipeline, S1-Omni learns to genuinely respect the laws of the natural world, which vastly improves its reliability.
Now that we know how it's structured to think, let's move to Section 4, Training a Scientific Mind, and reveal the sheer scale of information required to teach an AI to think like a multidisciplinary scientist.
8 million. The researchers built what they call the S1-Omni corpus, and this massive dataset contains a staggering 8 million high-quality scientific reasoning and task records.
To truly appreciate the scale of that number, look at this distribution wheel. The inner circle shows the major domains, but you really need to look at the outer ring. This represents over 200 specific scientific tasks. It spans everything from predicting molecular gaps in chemistry to generating complex mathematical proofs, all the way to identifying tiny blood vessels in a retinal eye scan. The sheer depth and breadth crammed into this single AI's training diet is visually staggering when you see it laid out like this.
Breaking down those top scientific domains, we see chemistry makes up over 23%, biology is nearly 22%, followed by computer science, math, and materials. The crucial takeaway here is that by perfectly balancing these massive amounts of data, the AI learns to draw hidden connections across entirely different fields, connections that a highly specialized human scientist might literally never see. So, the theory is sound, and the training data is massive. But does it actually work in practice? Let's move to Section 5, Proving the Omni capability.
When tested across more than 60 rigorous scientific benchmarks, the results are just staggering. S1-Omni boasts a 95.5% win rate against the GPT model family and an 83.3% win rate against the Gemini model family in these specific scientific tasks. It proves definitively that adding strict scientific guardrails drastically outperforms general open domain language models when you are trying to do actual science.
Take drug discovery, for example, which is notoriously difficult. S1-Omni outperforms GPT-5.5 on 16 out of 18 specific ADMET evaluations. That refers to how a drug is absorbed, distributed, metabolized, and excreted by the human body. And not only does it beat the general models, but it actually matches or entirely beats dedicated domain-specific models on crucial tasks like predicting intestinal absorption or analyzing complex protein interfaces. Let's see how this all builds into real-world applications. Look closely at example 1 on the left. A user types simple text instruction. Apply a red semi-transparent highlight to the spleen region in this image. Below that, you can actually see the AI's thinking process, where it logically analyzes the anatomy of the axial CT slice, correctly identifies the enlarged spleen in the left upper quadrant, and then, in the bottom row, it generates a mathematically precise red segmentation mask right over the target organ. In example 2, in the middle, the user asks the AI to translate a cone beam CT image into a high-quality CT image. The AI's reasoning correctly identifies the massive streak artifacts caused by a metallic prosthesis in the patient's breast. It then generates an entirely clean, artifact-free image, beautifully preserving the delicate anatomical boundaries. And finally, in example 3 on the right, the model takes a blurry, degraded MRI scan and is asked to restore it to full resolution. S1-Omni infers the missing high-frequency spatial components and reconstructs the fine anatomical details of the cortical ribbon in the brain, outputting a remarkably sharp image. Think about that.
It is reading a text prompt, thinking scientifically about human anatomy, and generating pixel-perfect visual data. It truly is a paradigm shift. We are moving away from isolated tools and toward a unified, universal scientific assistant. Which leaves us with this final, thrilling thought. When our AI can finally see the whole scientific picture and seamlessly translate across every single discipline, what on earth will we discover next? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.